I understand we do have a public speaker this morning and some distinguished ones as well. Where's our...
Senator Martin Golden is the only speaker.
Good morning, Senator. Thanks for coming.
Good morning. Thank you very much. And I am your only speaker, so it won't be long. So thank you for allowing me to speak before you this morning. I'm State Senator Marty Golden. I represent Brooklyn, the 22nd Senatorial District, largely impacted by the service cuts on June 27, 2010. So much so that I had no choice but to file a lawsuit against the MTA in partnership with the disabled residents of my community who have been shut out of Manhattan, parts of Brooklyn, because the train, now their only option, is just not feasible for those in wheelchairs and for those facing other disabilities who cannot use the stairs. There are good cuts and there are bad cuts, and this was a bad cut. The bus routes included in my lawsuit, I highlighted the 37 and the 38, which prior to the service reductions in June provided uptown express bus services. Since these cuts have gone into effect, the commute for many of the young, the old, the seniors, and the disabled have been increased by more than 40 minutes, and for some, up to an hour, on overcrowded buses and standing room conditions only. Do you consider a commute of an hour and 45 minutes an express? I don't. And neither does the countless commuters who have stopped me in the streets and called my office, who have emailed me, and so on. And that's why I stand before you this morning to comment on a proposal I received that seeks the implementation of the X27 and X28 bypass service via West Street in Manhattan. I must say one thing first. The proposal is definitely progress. And I'm happy to see that the New York City Transit Authority acknowledges the current plan that the only bus routes are the 27 and 28 is not working. There are, in your letter states, significant ridership imbalances which crowded midtown trips, often followed by downtown trips with empty seats. To address this problem, you are proposing a bypass service to implement during the morning and evening rush hours. This is a good step towards putting the travel time of the commuters first as your plan routes and schedules. But we need to go further. While this plan will reduce travel time somewhat, the buses will still be traveling locally, so that the commute for those uptown will still not be convenient, as was the case with the X37 and the X38 were operating. I urge the Metropolitan Transit Authority to consider restoring the route to the status it was before June 27th. That would be the best solution to the ridership imbalance. Let's put the X37, the X38 back on the FDR, exiting at 23rd Street. This is the best way to transport people more quickly and efficiently from my district to uptown Manhattan. I ask for this on behalf of many of the commuters who depend on the service to get to work. I am still not understanding the fact of why the X37 and X38 were eliminated, when data showed that they transported more than 2,600 people per day. I will leave you with some comments from emails I received and hope the messages from my commuters and men and women who ride your buses every day will have an impact on your decision regarding the future of express bus service in my district. If you restore the service to the way it was, and maybe won't describe the commute, as one did in email, as harrowing and atrocious, and then maybe people won't sell their apartments and their homes in my district because the express bus no longer provides express bus.
Senator, please sum up.
These are the people that live in my district are the people that pay that tax base. If you believe that they will go there and they'll find a way to get to work anyway, that's just not going to work. They're going to go to Jersey City, they're going to sell their homes here, take a 10-minute ferry ride, get to work within a half hour, and get a home in Jersey City or another part of Jersey for half the price that they paid here. That is the very tax base that we use to be able to pay to keep this system working. And maybe it won't be furious, these people, with the system. Long lines, increased travel time, a lesser quality of life, and a commute is how the MTA is going your way. And finally, I ask again for the X37 and X38 to be restored by using the words one woman wrote to me, please help reinstate the X38 express bus service during the morning and evening rush hour commute. It would be so helpful to us Midtown commuters. Thank you for your attention.
Okay. Can I have a motion on the minutes from last time?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. And any changes to the work plan this month?
No.
No. Terrific. Okay, let's go into the President's report. We got a late start, and there's a lot to do, so talk fast.
Would report on the new subway performance indicators this month. We'll use the new methodology that was presented to the committee back in May and June, which includes revised measurements of terminal on-time performance and weight assessment, as well as new key performance indicators that combine existing measurements into single measures. We're going to cover several key reports today, and because this is the first time that we're actually presenting this data, I've asked the chairperson if it would be better that we present the data, let you disseminate it to others. We will provide a more detailed presentation next month on the assessment of that data, because given all the items that we have to cover on the agenda today, this may take an awful lot of time, and it would give you the benefit of having a look at that data and a month's time to review it so that we can come back and give you a more detailed presentation. But this is the data we will be reporting on a monthly basis going forward. Carmen?
Thank you, Tom, and good morning. Briefly, using available data, we've been able to recalculate the on-time performance and weight assessment measures retroactively for 1 year so that we can present our historical weekday and weekend performance system-wide and on 3 major subway lines, the IRT, BMT, and IND. Before we talk about this month's results, I want to explain the new key performance indicators a little bit more fully. KPIs are used extensively in other transit properties, especially in the Asia transit agencies. The selection of indicators we are using are based on our customer priorities as well as management's operational concerns. The 2 KPIs we're using are Service KPI, which monitors train service, and a Passenger Environment Survey, which tracks conditions in stations and onboard trains. We selected 3 indicators for the Service KPI, that is, weight assessment, terminal on-time performance, and mean distance between failure. Weight assessment is given more weight than the other 2 indicators because it represents the factor that most directly affects how our customers experience train service. The PES KPI combines measures of appearance, condition, and passenger information for both cars and stations into a single score. With the new PES KPI, we are able to increase PES reporting from twice yearly to monthly, although we'll still publish an in-depth PES report showing all measures twice a year. In terms of on-time performance, terminal on-time performance for July was as follows. System-wide weekday OTP was 86.3. That's down 0.5% from 86.8 in July of 2009. System-wide weekend OTP was 87.1. That's down 3.9% from the 90.6 in July of 2009. Right-of-way and overcrowding delays were the primary factors affecting terminal on-time performance in July. From a weight assessment perspective, the 12-month rolling average for system subway weekday weight assessment was 78.7% in July. That's up 2.1% from 77.1 in 2009. Key performance indicators for service KPI was 83.1 in July. That's up 2.1% from 81.4% in July of 2009. The system-wide passenger environment survey was 91.9 in July. That's up 1.1% from 90.9 in July of 2009. And for Staten Island, the service KPI, which is not reported, but their PES KPI was 88.8. That's up 0.6% from 83.3 in July of 2009. Mean distance between failure for the month of July was 126,376. That's down 1.7% from 128,541 in July of 2009. The 12-month average was 165,355 miles, up 21.2% from 136,445. Before I conclude, I just want to make comment on 2 issues. One is the experience that we had this summer with the fleet, particularly in the hottest summer on record. So I really want to thank all of our employees that worked so hard to ensure that we had about a 98% performance in terms of air conditioning. And then lastly, a couple of weeks ago when we had the tornadoes touch down, we had a massive job that evening clearing trees and debris from our tracks. But again, I want to thank all of our employees because service the next morning at 5 o'clock, we were up and running 100%. So thank you.
That was spectacular performance, Carmen. Thanks very much. That was a very, very wild night, and I was very surprised that service held up as well as it did. Good job.
Carmen, in the PES, are you still using weighted indicators such as if a station has a ceiling that's crackled paint and dripping and everything, but the lighting is good in the station, that actually doesn't fail a station?
Yeah, its appearance. Peter could probably help me with that a little bit to get into the weeds on that one. But it is appearance, but not necessarily. Not necessarily would that give you a bad mark.
I mean, one of the things to clarify that I think we next month will do clarify this a little in the report. These appearance measures are not station conditions. They're not peeling paint. They're not structural conditions. They're litter, cleaning, those sorts of issues, and we'll clarify that for next month.
To your point, though, Andrew, the chairman shares your concerns, a lot of people's concerns about the effect of peeling paint on the customer's perception of a station. And we have many stations that may be in the upper third from a structural standpoint and yet have peeling paint. And so he's asked us to put together a program to be able to deal with that. And we are to come forward, and we can do it at this committee, but certainly at CPOC as well, under the station initiatives. One of the issues we got to deal with, it's almost all of it's lead-based paint, so we have to be careful how we do it. But the issue of, at a minimum, scraping, and in some cases scraping and painting, we may end up having a program to do that, because it is affecting the appearance and a customer's perception of the station.
And in the past, we had a limitation where we were limited to removal of 200 pounds of scraping paint per month, but we are now able to get beyond that, so we can ramp that up a bit.
Cheryl?
Okay, moving on to safety, June results continued a positive trend. The subway customer accident rate decreased by 9.9% in June, and the 12-month average also decreased by 7.9% compared to a year ago. The employee lost time accident rate was down 32.6% in July, and the 12-month average rate also decreased by 2.1% compared to the previous year. The number of confirmed fires was down 9.2% during July, and they were also down 3.1% over the last 12 months. Also in July, all fires were categorized as being low or average in severity.
Okay. Who's next?
Chief Diaz?
Good morning. For the month of August, we were down in crime 1.6%, down 3 crimes. For the year to date, we're up 2.5. We're up 33 crimes, the bulk of them being grand larcenies. So we seem to have seen a little bit of an increase in cell phone snatches, iPhone snatches. You'll see the increase in felony assaults. The bulk of that are assaults on police officers while effecting arrest, the suspects resisting and the officer receiving an injury. Yes.
You don't consider fare evasion wouldn't be in on any of these, correct?
That's correct.
You're keeping track of those in some fashion, though?
In fare evasion enforcement, yes, we do. Yes.
When can we have statistics on that?
We can give them to the board, yeah. There's no issue.
Do we? There are so many of them. Do you keep track of?
I only say this because the Transit Riders Council did a project recently, and at the public hearings, lots of riders and testifiers brought up the fact that they're seeing people going in without paying. So I'm just wondering if we're quantifying those rather than just stories about them.
I don't know how we can if there isn't a booth agent there to witness it.
That's the problem. There are cameras working in places.
One of the things we've been really concentrating on is to look at the level of damage or out of service when the MVMs go out of service. We keep track of that, working really closely with the chief and his folks to ensure that we're targeting the higher level stations. So every month our goal is to really focus on the stations where we're seeing the higher level of MVM vandalism and some of the illegal swiping, and to really concentrate on that. And they have means and methods that they're employing to really begin to tackle that. So,
Carmen, there's MVM vandalizing, and then there's jumping over a turnstile, going through the exit door. Those are totally different.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I understand.
Yeah. Our fare evasion arrests so far this year are up almost 12%, 15,376 versus 13,735 last year. Summonses are pretty much flat, 49,151 this year versus 49,505 last year.
Your summonses or arrests are only when a police officer visually sees the person. It's never by camera or a broadcast description from a booth agent or anything like that.
It's by description, yes. I'm sorry, by observation.
By personal observation.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
I think I recall you saying that the subway is sort of a breeding ground to catch criminals that actually engage in far worse behavior by doing petty crimes in the subway. They oftentimes are pretty hardened folks.
That's correct. We probably have in the area of about 7,000 returns on warrants from stopping people for relatively minor crimes. We have probably about another 700 what we call I-cards, where detectives are looking for suspects, where we stop them for relatively minor offenses and wind up taking them into apprehension.
Finance preliminary July fare box revenue was $279 million, $4.3 million below the forecast. The average non-student fare in July 2010 was $1.49. In constant 1996 dollars, the July average fare fell from $1.38 in 1996 to $1.03 in 2010. Preliminary July operating expenses before depreciation were below the forecast by $20.5 million, 2% for the month, and $33 million, or just under 1% year-to-date, due mostly to underruns in fringe benefits, energy costs, overtime from strict management controls, and you'll see a report on that later in today's meeting, and materials and supplies. Because there was no meeting last month, this month's agenda also includes June financial and ridership results for your information. In terms of ridership, July 2010 totaled $188.5 million, 0.4% below forecast, and year-to-date ridership was $1,341.9 million, 2% below the forecast. Average weekday subway ridership in July was 5 million, an increase of 1.2% over 2009. Average weekday local bus ridership was 2.1 million, a decrease of 0.7% from 2009. Average weekday express bus ridership was 40,000, a decrease of 4% from 2009. Average weekday paratransit ridership in July was 29%, an increase of 6.6% from 2009. Preliminary August 2010 financial results. We have an early look at the financial results for August. Preliminary August total fare box revenue was $279.4 million, 0.3% above forecast, and preliminary August operating expenses were under forecast by $12 million, 2.6%, due primarily to lower fringe benefit, materials, supplies, paratransit, and bus fuel expenses. As I said, I will have another report later on in the meeting on our aggressive overtime control spending.
Doreen. Tom, you said that bus ridership was down, and have you looked at that from a perspective that we're running less buses because of the cuts? And then the second is subway is up slightly, and what's the net difference? Are people going from the buses into the subway system, or are we putting people on the roads?
The subway increase was 1.2%. The local bus was 0.7%, but express bus was 4%. So I think 4% down. Both the bus numbers were down. So I think we have to take a careful look to see to what extent the service cuts have impacted bus service. There's also a correlation, I think, in Staten Island with a high amount of express bus ridership with the financial district, but I'll let Peter provide some information if he has any from a service standpoint.
Certainly, we're looking at that. We only have route by route and station data for July, so that was the first month. It's something we're looking at. It looks like certainly there was some decline, which we expected, but we're looking at that, and we're counting and looking at express bus ridership now. We've seen some changes that we'll respond to in future committees on that.
I suspect with the summer months over now, September really will tell the tale about how much those service cuts have impacted ridership.
Yes.
Mark?
Tom, I think that the great statistic that we say, but we often ignore, is that the average non-student fare throughout the system today is actually more than one-third less than it was in 1996, before MetroCards, before free transfers. And why we don't put this on every bus and subway is something that I do not understand, because it is one-third less than it was in 1996, which was a long time ago.
It's point well taken. No, it's both that number and as well as the constant dollars number of $1.03 per ride begs a lot of questions in terms of how we're pricing that ride.
Sadly, I think a lot of folks don't understand the concept of the time value of money, and they'll look at a fare in 1996, which on the face value of it was a lot lower, and say how can we possibly be paying a third more? So we have to get some of our smart math whizzes to figure out how we can get that point across in a way that the person on the street will understand it.
Capital Program, Fred Smith.
Okay, looking at the capital program results through July, Transit committed a total of just under $1.3 billion year to date. During June and July, Transit awards totaled $893 million, and the big push was with the approval of the capital program in June. We had a number of projects lead out. Major June awards included a signal modernization project to install communication-based train control on the Flushing 7 line, modernization of the Church Avenue interlocking, which is located in Brooklyn, on the Culver F line, reconstruction of station platforms and replacement of track, canopies, railings, concrete stairs, and other miscellaneous elements at the historically landmarked Dyckman Street Station on the Broadway 7th Avenue No. 1 train in Manhattan. And in conjunction with that, we've initiated component work, which is part of our new station strategy, on the 5 stations going north at 207th, 215th, 225th, 238th, and 242nd. We also awarded a contract for new security fencing at 5 locations, 5-yard locations, 2 in Brooklyn, 2 in the Bronx, and 1 in Queens. And we also awarded a project to provide additional cooling solutions to the communication rooms at 5 subway locations. For July, awards included the replacement of the subway track, elevated track panels, mainline switches, and CWR continuous welded rail throughout the subway system. Painting contracts for the Astoria N line and No. 7 line in Queens. Project for the rehabilitation of 50 emergency exits located throughout the subway system. And a tunnel lighting project for 1.2 miles of tunnel lighting in Queens. Through July, $241 million in projects were substantially completed, the major one being a signal modernization on the lower 8th Avenue line, which affected the Chambers Street, Canal Street, and World Trade Center interlockings on the AC&E line. And also a project for closed-circuit television at 64 priority stations and the acceptance of 90 articulated buses. There were no substantially completed projects for the month of July. That completes my report.
We're going to be seeing you again at CPOC today for the 59th Street station. Is that? I thought that was on the agenda. Are we going to be seeing?
Well, the stations program, we'll handle any questions you have on.
Seeing what Cortez is. Okay, great. Thank you,
Fred.
Fred.
We'll do the update and give
The
you
only other item I'd like to add, if you saw the news conference that the mayor had with the police commissioner and the chairman last week, we did complete an initiative, a joint initiative with the police department to turn over security cameras, passenger identification cameras, so that those screens now go immediately to the police command center. And that's the station complexes at Penn Station, Grand Central, and Times Square. Hundreds of cameras, and people in Michael's organization as well as Fred's organization, with a lot of support and direction from John O'Grady and Joe Christian, actually got that completed. And that's very important because the police now have the ability to access those cameras directly. They've got tremendous pan, tilt, and zoom capability. And in some of the demonstrations I've seen, you could zoom in on somebody reading the paper at a newsstand. I mean, they're that good. So that was something we talked to you about 3 or 4 months ago. I couldn't read the article they were reading.
Are we now abolishing the MTA police force?
No, not that I know of.
Fred, on the tunnel lighting,
Yes.
That should actually probably say E and M, not E and F, if it's just 11th Street to Queens Plaza. Yes.
It's technically the 11th Street cut, which is the connection between the BMT Astoria line and the Queens Boulevard line. So it's a segment in between the 2 lines.
Okay.
You stumped him. Wow.
Well, Andrew and Mr. X have the detailed history of the subway system down to pat.
Next time, bring your sunglasses when you're on this committee. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. Thanks.
Michael?
Let me give you a brief summary of the work that occurred between July and now. I'll start with the Folsom Street Transit Center. One thing we have accomplished on time was the substantial completion of the Transit Center Foundation on August 16th, and this 20-month contract was completed on schedule and actually within budget. The Transit Center building that will cover that foundation was awarded to a joint venture of Plaza and Chavone on August 5th, and that award all of the Fulton Street Transit work is actually regarding construction has been awarded. So we are now just working toward completing the work. I would like to, one of the things I would like to point out is that I have a slide, just going to put it on, in which I'm actually, again, trying to make sure that everyone understands what are the completion dates for the various, the rollout of the various stages of the work. We have, the Courtney Street was completed last November. This on next year, actually, in May. Yes? It's fine on your computer. The William Street entrance will be open in May of 2011. The new Fulton AC 45 connection will happen next August. And the Cortlandt Street, the southbound platform R, will be open on September 11, 2011. Then in 2012, we have 5 other milestones. This is the Fulton Street Station rehab, the new Day Street entrance in July, the opening of the Day Street concourse in November, a new escalator to John Street, and then last but not least, the Corbin Building restoration and first floor retail will be done and open in 2012 December. And the AC mezzanine that is will be open in March of 2013 with basically the icing on the cake. The transit center will be done in June of 2014. All of the projects are on schedule, slightly ahead of schedules, and we are within budget.
When does the tunnel boring machine from the second half of the subway?
2050. Just would like to mention the fact that our safety, and I've had it, there is in the book, the safety record on this project was outstanding with 0.8, in fact, lost time injury rate that is way below the 2.2 that is the national. I would like to move to the number 7 line. Now, the TBM machines, I'm sorry, just make sure that I'm on the right project, have been both removed from the site, and we had another, I don't know how many of you recall that we were freezing the ground on a portion of one of the tunnels, and then we're now freezing, in fact, the part of the tunnel going towards Site A, and that was completed, and excavation will start shortly. We have, in fact, on Site L, that is 41st and Dyer, where we have a ventilation building. The excavation, the support for excavation started. And this is a joint venture of China Construction and Hallmar. The job is proceeding for the moment, no issues. We have received bids for the Site J ventilation building on August, and the apparent low bidder in this particular case, it was Younger Construction, and again the bid came in about 20%, a little over 20% below our budget. So we're pretty happy with that. There is one other site that was scheduled for the bid opening for the end of this month. We may delay it for a couple of weeks. There is a request from the contractors, and we want to make sure that we have lots of bidders, so we will...
Which one is that, Michael?
This is Site K.
Site K.
Okay. And at this point, actually, it looks pretty good that most of our projects are coming below budget. And in fact, the way we have, to a certain degree, repackaged some of the contracts is done in such a way to improve the probability of us completing the job in December of 2013.
So we'll hear next month about the Site J.
Yeah. Again, I'd like to mention again that the safety record on this project is also very good, not as good as the Fulton Transit, but it's 1.5 lost injury time, so that's, again, way below the 2.2 mark. On this project, we have at this point committed $1.5 billion worth of work, and things are moving along at this point very well. Second Avenue subway. The TBM mining continues on the West Bore. We are right now, I believe, this week we're breaking into the 70s, so we are advancing south. And excuse me? The East 70s, yes. And the work is actually, the ups and downs of TBM work are there. But it seems like we're doing fine. In some areas, we have encountered some water infiltration and problems, so we're making sure that things are proceeding appropriately. The contractor completed the lining work on the 69th Street access shaft. And this will actually allow us to we'll start the 72nd Street cavern work that is expected to be awarded to a joint venture of Chavon, Shea, and Kiewit, and we expect it to actually do it this week.
And how is that coming in terms of cost expectations?
Oh, it came in on the dot with our estimates, but below the budget. Actually, significantly below the budget. Or we kind of, I'm not sure that everyone here understands. Estimate is as much as a science as is an art. You can get the quantities and put a price on them. You can't figure out always what the bids will be. They have to do a lot with the market and what is the appetite of contractors to lower their prices. So in these days appears to be that they have a willingness to work at a lower profit margin or so. Yeah. We expect to have. You also just on a side, we have awarded a task order to a firm, Dominich Hicks and Krochmalnik, for services to survey, evaluate, and design mitigative remediation work for the fragile buildings within the 63rd and 86th Street station areas. The others were done by the current designer. And we found it that we would be able to advance the work faster and probably get, better pricing, so to speak, if we make it competitive. So we did. So it's advancing well right now. We are just in the process of doing all the inspections on the various buildings. So when we'll be ready, probably, I believe in the next 60 days, we'll have a better idea what we need to do there. The 63rd Street Lexington Avenue station, we will have a bid opening in October 12th, and again, we hope that we'll have a positive result. That's about it for the two. Again, safety record is it stays at 1.5. We had a slight uptick in the last few months. We were as low as 1 in January. We're a little higher right now, but we're still way below the federal recommended national standard.
Thank you. Ready for procurements?
The procurement package this month presents both New York City Transit and MTA capital construction procurements. There are 11 actions totaling $26.1 million in expenditures. There is also an addition of an item to procure medical health benefits coverage for most represented employees. And I believe there's, Bob will talk very briefly about that.
We apologize for getting you that staff summary late. It's not in the actual book. We've distributed it separately. We've had medical benefits coverage for about 150,000 participants, which includes about 40,000 employees, a number of retirees, and all their dependents. And the plans have been in place for decades. They were managed until 2003 by the unions. Management took them over in about 2003. It turns out they've never been competitively procured. The board approved the hiring of some consultants last year, and two of them, Aon Consulting and the Siegel Company, assisted staff in determining whether it would be valuable, worthwhile to bid these out. An analysis was performed, and it was determined to in fact do that. We bid them out, and over this past summer, we've gotten the proposals, we've had negotiations, we've had best and final offers, and we're proposing to change. With the proposal before you is to change healthcare carriers, and for a total savings, this would be a 3-year contract with a 2-year option. The expected savings, now this is just estimates, but the expected savings for 2011 would be $57 million. And the savings come primarily from two sources. The way we're covered now, 2/3 of our employees are covered under plans that are self-insured, where the providers, the carriers, they basically administer the claims. They provide the network of service providers like doctors and hospitals. But the cost of the claim, so we pay an administrative fee for that and for the handling of the claims. And then we pay the actual claims themselves. Those costs get passed through. The other third is covered by premium-based coverage, and the analysis has basically showed, and the proposals proved out, that we're paying basically $2,000 more per employee, and that's about 12,000 employees who are covered. We're paying $2,000 more in premium on the premium-based side than we are on the self-insured side. So, the pre-proposal estimates, we would save somewhere about $24 million. The savings have actually come in closer to $29 million, just on moving from premium-based to self-insured. And the balance of the savings primarily come from, we're proposing to move to Empire Blue Cross Blue Shield. That company has a much wider network of hospitals and providers than our current provider does. And as a result, they attract better discounts. The way this works is that the carriers negotiate separately. Each carrier negotiates separately with various providers, hospitals and doctors, basically, for discounts off their base rates. And we were able to, through Empire Blue Cross Blue Shield, we're able to achieve greater discounts for savings just on that of nearly $30 million in the first year. And the other side of the analysis that was done and part of the evaluation was whether or not our employees would have to have any change in their providers. And so the Siegel Company did that analysis. It's called a disruption analysis. On the HMO side of our coverage, the coverage is going to be about 99% the same for our employees. And also, because some of our retirees are outside of the metropolitan area, they don't really have coverage through our current provider, and so the current provider has to obtain contracts for them, and they actually very often have to go out of network. With Empire Blue Cross Blue Shield, which has national coverage, some of those retirees, perhaps many of them, will actually save money because they will now be within the network. So that's our proposal. let me just, I'm sorry, one other thing. We had a selection committee of 6 members. One of the members was from Labor. And in addition, throughout the process from beginning to end, we have invited all Labor representatives to participate. We've given briefings to them. So we believe, we've notified them at least.
So a couple of significant things. We're not going sole source anymore. This was bid out, which is something that is critical for this agency to keep doing. We're saving money, and in 99% of the cases, our workers and retirees will have no disruption in the relationship with their network of doctors that they've built up. So I know you did a tremendous amount of work. Before we take further questions, let's just get a motion. Second? Okay. Any questions on this, and then anything else on the procurement agenda? Mark?
Is the contractor on the first procurement really called Albatross North America? Those guys have a sense of humor or something, or is it the president is Abraham Albatross or something?
I asked the same question. Apparently that is really their name.
Aside from that comment, any other questions on the procurement agenda?
On the other items?
Yes.
On the Judlow Culver Viaduct procurement, we didn't know that when we first bid out the project that we were going to need these bolts fastened.
Andrew, this is a change. It was originally designed for welded rail to be installed on the entire limits between the special work, the interlocking at 4th Avenue, and the connection to the subway. However, in the course of the last couple of years, we've also installed low-vibration track at South Ferry and on the Ocean Parkway Viaduct. And our experience on the Ocean Parkway Viaduct was that the thermal stresses in the rail and the interaction with the concrete structure created additional maintenance issues. So the decision was made to scale back from a continuous welded rail design to 78-foot rails rather than the traditional 39 in order to minimize the number of joints but still maximize the longer rails. To do that then, instead of having the contractor install welded rail, he now has to drill the 78-foot sections of rail for the bolts and purchase the joint bars, and it adds to the installation cost as well. But we think for the long run, for lower maintenance, lower life cycle costs, it was the right decision.
That's the way we're going to go on most elevated structures now?
Well, right now we're only doing welded rail or the extended lanes on the concrete viaduct type structures, not the open deck elevated structure.
And I think one to distinguish between an elevated structure that had a ballasted roadbed. An elevated structure with a ballasted roadbed, you don't have trouble with CWR, do you?
No, there's give with the ballast, with the stone.
So, I mean, the preference is CWR as much as we can, but where it induces stress on the structure, we just can't do it.
So to put it in the vernacular, as you're going over these structures, you'll still hear that click every so often.
Half as much.
Not
half
as
much.
Every 78 feet instead of 39.
So the Queens Boulevard section of the number 7 line would be a similar situation, which is on a concrete.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it would. Okay. The problem with the Culver Viaduct is it's curved. It's not a long tangent stretch. There's curvature, and that's where you get the higher thermal stresses that can cause maintenance issues.
I'll just tell you a sidebar. I'll take you 10 seconds. First time I ever saw continuously welded rail cut, because we had a kink, and we had as soon as you made the cut, and you made a cut of 3 feet, that rail ran in a second. It just like that. That's how much stress is in the rail. So it's unbelievable.
And the viaduct is how old? Is that a 1920s or 30s structure?
In that range. I don't know the exact date, but yes. So
it's just amazing that they tackled issues like that far back and did it reasonably well.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a long life out of that so far. Any other questions before we... Okay, could I have a vote to move this to the board? All in favor? Okay.
Service changes?
Yeah.
In Section 7 of the agenda, we are presenting 4 service change proposals for committee information. The first is a proposal to modify the X27 and 28 express bus service by implementing a peak period, peak direction bypass on each route to address the ridership imbalance that exists between the midtown trips, which are crowded, and the downtown trips, which are less crowded. The second is a proposal to reroute the M3 and M100 bus service as a result of New York City DOT traffic pattern adjustments implemented in northern Manhattan, where they have introduced a number of locations, pedestrian plazas, and traffic calming measures at the intersection of St. Nicholas and Amsterdam between West 160th Street and West 163rd Street, and those went into effect on September 12th of this year. The third proposal in this month's package is to revise the operating path of the northbound M9 bus service to an altered terminal on East 23rd Street, and this new terminal location will provide M9 customers with more convenient access to the entrance of the Veterans Administration Hospital. The fourth and final service proposal is to inform the New York City Transit Committee of a request for a public hearing on the closure of a station entrance with improvements at other entrances at the Briarwood ENF station. These improvements are necessary to accommodate some traffic movement relocations and re-engineering. But pending the chairman's approval, the hearing would not be scheduled to be held until the autumn 2010.
Any questions?
Well, yeah, it is now. Yeah,
That's now.
That's now. Yeah. I thought it was 2011. It's 2010. Yes.
Just a question on the M3 and 100 rerouting. What's the reason that you're not bringing it back to St. Nicholas after the DOT things? Why are you keeping it on Amsterdam for like 7 blocks?
Joe or Peter, could you answer that?
Yeah, we're routing it over on 155th Street, which is a street that other buses use. All of the streets north of there that we could use up to, I guess, 160th Street are very narrow residential streets and really didn't feel that they were appropriate for routing buses on them. And St. Nicholas at that point is pretty close to Amsterdam, so it's not a huge gap.
So are signs going to be all up and down St. Nicholas that the buses, even when the DOT removes the stops, as I'm sure they will?
I believe, well, this change happened. We got relatively short notice on this, so that's why we haven't gone to the board prior to it happening. It was implemented 2 weeks ago, and we believe that everyone was notified.
Any other questions or comments on the service
Are we
changes?
now calling the Van Wyck station Briarwood?
I believe it's always been called the Briarwood Station, hasn't it been, Peter?
Van Wyck.
It was originally
Jamaica
Van Wyck Boulevard Station. Van Wyck Boulevard is no more. The expressway really took it out.
Name.
The neighborhood has requested it be called Briarwood. We've had a multi-year period where it's been Briarwood Van Wyck, and I believe that we are moving towards Briarwood as the name.
Thank you. Tom?
We have a number of special presentations. Many of them are just for your review and reading, and I'll certainly take any questions. I'd like to go over one right now on overtime reductions, because there have been similar reports at other committee meetings. You have a handout in front of you, but it'll also be up on the screen. First slide, please. The MTA across all the agencies are exceeding its overtime reduction target, and we're on track to achieve $54 million in savings in 2010. Next slide. Originally, we were projected to reduce overtime by $24 million, and we committed to that in February. An additional $22 million was identified in May for a total savings of $46, and we're now projecting to achieve end-of-year savings in the overtime category of some $54 million. Next slide. In terms of New York City Transit and its contribution to that from both the bus and subway standpoint, we've committed to a significant clampdown on overtime expenditures where we had the ability to discreetly do so. In some cases, we've got scheduled overtime, which is part of the scheduling process, so we can't do it there. But it's a 10% decrease overall from 2009. Next slide. We are limiting overtime to service critical needs only. I mean, Carmen mentioned, for example, the excellent performance of the air conditioning of the fleet. But that's an area where you will make an overtime expenditure to make sure your fleet is operating well. We're also trying to improve employee availability so that we can not have to backfill an open scheduled operating job with overtime. That's generally how it's done for bus operators and train operators and conductors. Next slide. The results that we've seen basically in New York City Transit primarily result of actions taken by our car equipment and maintenance away departments. HVAC systems were maintained at a very high level, and it did incur some overtime expenditures. And additional overtime was restricted to ensuring that necessary inspections are performed and our targets are being met. Obviously, when you have an incident like we had with that bad, severe storm, I think it was actually labeled a tornado, you will incur overtime to be able to restore service, but that's the type of overtime expenditures that everybody know and expect. It's discretionary ones we need to clamp down on. Some hot spots that we've identified are looking at things where we know for a fact that from a zero-based budgeting standpoint, we can take a look at the way we perform the work and try to analyze whether or not the proper discretion is being used by the supervisors that assign it. Absenteeism is another contributing factor to overtime, as I mentioned, and we'll focus on one unit at a time to try to deal with that. And we have to do so within the bounds of the existing collective bargaining agreement, because there are certain rules and processes and procedures that we need to abide by, and we'll be able to do that. And certainly we identify the top 20 to 40 overtime earners in an area and take a look very closely at their overtime. Last slide is that Buses has done an excellent job in terms of taking specific actions to deliver on overtime results. $24 million in estimated savings, $24 million in 2010 estimated savings compared to 2009. Overtime and targeted hotspots down by 18%, and the top 60 bus overtime earners are being tracked. This is just part of an aggressive program across all the MTA agencies we're having, and we're certainly supporting the forensic audit that the New York State Comptroller has on overtime.
Any questions on that report?
There's probably 42,000 employees, New York City Transit. There's probably between 6,000 and 7,000 at Long Island, between 5,000 and 6,000 at Metro North. Bridges and tunnels, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's over 50%, I would believe. The next presentation, I'm going to introduce Mark Beanstalk, Winton Habersham, and Dewey. I always forget Dewey's last name. Wesley. I apologize, Dewey. For those of you that have been around for a long time, we have probably starting in the 90s, my last tour here, had an increased need to provide for better communication means in the event of an emergency in all of our stations, all 468 of them. Some of them are relatively simple stations in an elevated structure where the platforms can be readily seen by anyone standing just about anywhere, and somebody standing on the platform can get someone's attention. Others are sprawling complexes underground where you enter the station versus where you stand and wait for a train could be long distances apart outside of any eye of anybody sitting in any station. And although we've put in customer assistance intercoms, that we've had a very, very mixed success with those, if not poor. They're not well signed. The reliability of the units is not all that well. They were designed and installed at a time when all communication devices were analog, and we're now sitting at a point in time where communication, which is moving, no pun intended, at the speed of light, fastest technological change in all of our technical streams of resources we have. And what I want to do today is unveil, literally, a prototype and have a demonstration of a unit that we intend to test on the system and to develop a program to have a much broader, wider installation of help point intercoms, as we're going to call them, so that in the event of an emergency or in the event of a customer requiring assistance, that we'll be able to provide that means to a customer. Those of you that know, we've had a number of highly publicized incidents where people have either descended to the track bed on their own, fell to the track bed, or were pushed to the track bed. And the importance, if you read the article today in today's paper, the Daily News, of the ability to notify the control center the difference of seconds may mean the difference of life. And the New York State Public Transportation Safety Board has deemed a high priority need for us to provide better means. So what we're going to give you a preview today and a very brief presentation that Winton and Mark and Dewey are going to show you, and a working demonstration on this device behind Mr. Sedora, is the prototype of this help point intercom. Gentlemen. Thank you. Yes, no, that's a good point.
As Mr. Prendergast has mentioned, leadership at New York City Transit have identified a means to provide a more reliable, visible, and customer-friendly communications to our customers. With the business objectives of improving customer contact with New York City Transit personnel, as well as providing a recognizable medium for customers to contact New York City personnel, we have developed a Help Point Intercom initiative. The HPI, as it's being called, system will ensure quick and reliable responses to customer requests for travel information as well as emergency assistance. It will provide a quick means to reach operations personnel who are trained to handle emergencies and provide information. And we feel that this will improve the customer's sense of security when they are in the various areas of the station. The new HPI will create an element of safety to our customers on platforms where they often do not have access to New York City Transit personnel and staff. This will be particularly helpful during emergencies, perhaps when customers fall to the roadbed accidentally or when they need to retrieve items from the tracks. Now, we do currently have a means of communicating with our customers. The customer assistance intercoms are installed across a number of stations to provide customer support. They're typically found in both paid and unpaid fare control areas, station passageways, underpasses, platforms, as well as at the tops and bottoms of mezzanine staircases. The existing system, however, has limitations that we trust the HPI will solve. The existing system is not readily visible to our customers. They were installed in areas where the infrastructure basically provided a means to easily install conduits and other equipment, and so as a result, they were installed perhaps often between column webs or flush with walls, and basically it hides them from the customer's view. Signage has been reported as being confusing in many of our customer surveys, and often the customers mistakenly activate the help button for basic travel information, when they need basic travel information. And really, the CAI was designed to provide help during more like emergencies and serious situations. It's also basically a telephone and has a telephone-like infrastructure, and so there's a delay when customers need to contact transit personnel. Up to 22 seconds that delay can be experienced. They can experience. It also has a limit on the amount of time that the call will last. Basically, 2 minutes. Within 2 minutes, the call will be timed out and automatically disconnects customers. And this presents a problem, perhaps when individuals cannot be heard or understood by the transit staff, and calls generally might take a little longer. So that's a problem. So we can see the existing system certainly has its limitations. The proposed system, the new HPI, will be a visible beacon, we feel, in our passenger stations. Because of its unique appearance, it will be easily recognizable as a means for customers to communicate with New York City Transit personnel. The HPI device is designed with an easy user interface, which can be easily maintained and can withstand many forms of vandalism. We feel that with the help of a marketing campaign, a good marketing campaigns, customers will be able to use the device as it was intended to be used. There will be faster response time. Customer emergencies will be immediately directed and handled by Rail Control Center personnel. All customer information requests handled by the station agents or by the Transit Information Center will be recorded, and we feel that this will be handled by them directly, and we feel that this will avoid the clogging of the emergency lines. When customers have a real need, a real emergency, they can go right to the RCC, the Rail Control Center, and those lines will be freed up. There will be other enhanced capabilities. The system will be self-diagnosed, so we'll have quicker and more efficient maintenance responses. It'll be programmed to inform customers when it's not working. They'll be able to see that. The HPI system will automatically adjust also for clarity in areas where there's a lot of background noises, such as platforms and the like. And so there'll be a much easier, quick and clear and direct means of communication. As I mentioned earlier, the HPI devices will be, upon activation, will be recorded at the Rail Control Center, the station agent, as well as at the Transit Information Center. Also, because of its digital and networked infrastructure, there's a means to capture data that we feel will be useful for any type of reporting that needs to be done. We'll know what areas are receiving more calls than other areas, where we seem to can communicate better with our customers and the like. To address ADA concerns, it'll be equipped with a induction loop to assist customers with hearing impairments. And finally, the HPI will be camera capable and equipped for CCTV. We have a flow chart there that will depict how the information and how communication will be provided to our customers. Upon activation, if there is a real emergency, as Mr. Prendergast is showing, they'll be directed directly to the Rail Control Center, and the Rail Control Center will be able to take that call, and they'll determine whether or not it is an actual emergency. If it is a real emergency, they'll go down, the flow chart goes down, and it'll be addressed. For example, if a train, if it's the RCC is notified that a person fell to the roadbed, the RCC can immediately take action, tell all trains to stop and stay, and they can dispatch people to the scene. If it's determined that it's not a real emergency, the RCC can direct that call back to either the station agent or to the Transit Information Center. On the other hand, if upon activation the customer wants just some travel information, they'll be connected first to the station agent, and then the station agent can handle that call and determine whether or not it's just basic travel information they need or if they can help them locally. So this system, we feel, will provide a much better means of communicating to our customers and certainly assist them as they need to get around the city just by information or through emergencies. I'll now turn it over to Mark, who can let us know exactly how this will be handled.
We'll have a working demonstration when he's done, too, so you can see some of that. Pardon me? What will she wear tonight?
In implementing this project, we've adopted a system engineering approach, recognizing not only the system's nature of the project itself, but the fact that we'll be touching 468 subway stations, a tremendous breadth of the deployment. So we've actually gone out very early in the development and the design and involved all of the stakeholders in developing a concept of operations document, which was completed last month, as well as requirements for the units themselves. We've also begun to identify and put in place management plans for risks that might be associated with the deployment of the project. And we'd also like just to recognize also that the HPI, the Help Point Intercom that you see there, is not just a communication system. As Winton said, it's a beacon in our station. It's a focal point. It gives people a sense of security. It lets people know that somebody is there to help them if they need assistance. In terms of design and design of the unit, we employed the services of Masamichi Udagawa from Antenna Design. He's worked on many of our projects. He was involved in the design of the MetroCard vending machines, as well as the design of several of our car classes. And he designed the modern HPI, which you see in front of you. This is a rendering of the HPI in a column mount configuration. It's actually able to be mounted 3 different ways, depending on the particular needs of the station. A column mount that you see here, a freestanding, which is the unit that's right now on the floor here. It can also be wall mounted directly to a wall, with various options for conduit and cable entry if necessary. It's a close-up of the customer interface with a speaker on top, just moving down the right side of the screen for a moment. The place for a future camera so that the person answering the call will be able to see the person who's initiated the call, as well as the microphone, and 2 large, clearly labeled buttons, one labeled emergency, one labeled information. There is also raised lettering and braille for those people who are sight impaired and need that additional capability. In terms of the project scope, our plan is to implement a phased deployment. We'll begin with a 2-station pilot. Those 2 stations are 23rd Street and Lexington Avenue and Brooklyn Bridge. At those two stations, we'll be trying several different things. One will be a wireless implementation. We'll see that in a moment. And the other, we will wire all of the health point intercoms back to the communications room. And our plan is to complete the deployment of those two pilot stations by the end of this year. There'll be approximately 20 units deployed total between those two stations. That will be followed up by an evaluation period of the pilot, an initial deployment, where we will deploy two HPIs, one on the unpaid side, one on the paid side in each fare control area in a station, and at least one unit on every station platform. The final deployment will then come back and install additional units on the platforms to increase coverage on the platforms, as well as replace those older CAI units that haven't been replaced in the initial deployment. At 23rd and Lexington, the blue dots represent the surveyed and agreed upon locations of the health point intercoms. As you can see, in every fare control area, there's one on the paid side and the unpaid side, with the exception of the full-time fare control area on the lower right, where there's only one on the unpaid side. And we've got three shown on every platform here. And this station is a wired station. The communications room is located in the top left of the picture. Brooklyn Bridge is a wireless implementation. Again, the blue dots represent the locations of the health point intercoms, 3 per platform, and in the fare control areas. In terms of our procurement approach for the units, we've met extensively with our procurement department. We've developed a preliminary schedule. We've met with potential HBI vendors and shared with them the concept of operations, the requirements documents. We expect to have prototype units back from several vendors by the end of November. We will test those units extensively, both in our laboratory at 2 Broadway as well as in some passenger stations. And hopefully we'll be able to qualify several units, put those units on our qualified products list, and then we'll have a competition essentially for units that are qualified and meet all the requirements, so we can receive the best pricing available when we actually go and deploy both in initial and final deployments. In terms of construction, our plan is to dedicate a construction management team to this project, again recognizing the scope and breadth of this project. Given the time frame for our planned installation, some installation will be done by in-house forces and some we expect to need to be done by a contractor supported by our subways and CPM personnel. And we have a fairly aggressive construction schedule. As I said earlier, our plan is to complete the 2 pilot stations by the end of the year. After evaluation of those 2 stations, we'll roll into the initial deployment where we'll focus initially on certain priority locations. We will establish those priority locations together with customer services and operations planning. We'll then radiate out from those priority locations to the remainder of the system. And our goal is to have units installed in all 468 stations within 2 years. In terms of evaluating the pilot phase, we'll be evaluating both wireless and wired performance. It's very tricky, given our station infrastructure and some of the unique configurations of our stations, to guarantee 100% wireless coverage within our stations, some challenges that we're seeing actually on other projects. Within this pilot, though, we'll be doing some evaluations of coverage. Our goal is to try to do as much of the system as we can in a wireless configuration, because that will save significant time and money on the installation side. We're also going to gauge customer reaction. We've already had some surveys done a few years ago in terms of the existing customer assistance intercoms, as well as some planned health point intercom designs. And we'll validate the concept of operations at these 2 stations when the units are actually live and customers are using them. Conceptual budget we've begun to put together. We've got $10 million allocated right now in the 2010 capital program. We anticipate design of the system to run between $2 and $3 million. The final scope and budget will be established after the prototype, the pilot phase evaluation. We are working to reduce whatever the installation cost will be through the use of greater deployment of the wireless units, though we also recognize that both the wireless and the wireless units will be providing a communications infrastructure within the station environment that we currently do not have, and that common infrastructure can be shared, and our plan is to share them amongst several other projects. So, for example, the new fare payment system, CCTV systems, additional wireless services, advertising, digital signage, additional train arrival signs, and by amortizing the cost of that common infrastructure within the station amongst all of these other initiatives, we significantly lower the cost to any of the individual projects. In terms of the risk that we've identified to date, obviously it's a fairly aggressive schedule for both design and installation. We still have some communications room issues. Under the procurements, we did award a contract for additional cooling solutions in 5 communications rooms. There are some more of those that will be coming over the next several months that will be brought to the committee for approval. But heat in our stations and in our communications rooms is still a challenge that we face. A fairly aggressive procurement schedule in order to meet a 2-year deployment. We're looking for a vendor to deliver between 100 and 200 fully functioning units a month, as well as installation issues. We have many historic stations, many architecturally significant stations. Although we think the unit by itself is an architecturally aesthetic unit, it has to be integrated within the overall aesthetics of the station, and that does provide some challenges, but working together, I think we can overcome those. In terms of next steps, we'll be completing or working to complete the 2-station pilot, evaluate the results at the end of the year. We'll establish a design budget and both then refine the construction support cost estimates to move forward with the initial deployment. We'll begin to initiate the formal HPI procurement after we receive and evaluate the prototypes in the end of November. And then we'll identify and assign the resources necessary to implement this project going forward at all 468 stations. Thank you.
Dewey, please show them working presentation. What we're going to try to do here is recreate exactly how you would interface with it, what some of the features are, and how fast it responds, because this is a digital device versus what we have out there right now, which is analog device.
Okay. What Dewey did right now, by the way, is he unplugged the power cord. The unit does have in it a power supply and battery backup, so there are no wires right now connected to the unit at all.
This isn't a reported detection device. I was hoping that's what it was. Okay, so do I want to press emergency? Or
Whatever you want to press emergency. Press emergency.
Right, we're running over, so I'll press the emergency.
You've reached the Rail Control Center. What's your emergency?
Our meeting's running late.
Why don't you explain some of the features, Dewey, so people understand, okay?
We have the identifiable part. This is the blue beacon. For sure, you can see it. Everybody can see this part right here. And we have an induction loop.
Actually, ring the button again and don't hang up the receiver yet.
Sure.
Either one.
As you can see, when the button is depressed, 2 things happen. The beacon strobes, as well as the green on the information lights up. On the emergency, it was red, so the person who's pressing it has that indication of what button he pressed, always remembers, oh, I've requested information or I've got an emergency. Those are the features of the unit.
And I'll stay there as long as the session is up.
Yeah, the old system used to time out after 2 minutes. The call would drop off, which is a little frustrating. The reinforcing of the beacon, tells the user that, he or she's been interacted with. This will have a digital number assigned to it, so whomever is on the receiving end will know what station and where. For those that don't know the nomenclature of our system, you enter it and you go into some of the confines and they say, where are you? And in our nomenclature, it's north end of the northbound platform at 23rd Street. Now, some people may know that one, but there's some complexes that are far more complex. They won't have to ask that question. They'll know that's where that location is. It also has a camera. It will have a camera-ready feature if we decide to pursue it.
If you're going to,
that give the ability for the person on the receiving end to view on a monitor what's going on. Because if it's bedlam in behind the person, it kind of takes a totally different set of emergency conditions versus someone talking calmly and saying, I'm lost, I'm at 23rd and Lex, I really don't know what to do.
Fooling with the system repeatedly, or if it's someone that needs to be buzzed in, someone can see that it's a legitimate.
Right.
Does the same
I'm not going to give you different examples, but for everything we put in the system, we make sure that it is as vandal resistant as it can possibly be. And I won't tell you the exact tests that we do, but it is vandal resistant.
The other thing, this thing of having it stand independently, I mean, structurally, isn't that quite vulnerable?
The preferred location would be in the web of a column or mounted to a wall. But there are some locations, like for example on an elevated structure, where you may have to have some level of freestanding. So, but everything we put on a station environment in an unpersoned area has got to meet a vandal resistance standard that we have.
Does the same person answer who makes the public address announcements at Grand Central during rush hour and you can't understand him, or is it a different person?
It'd probably be a different person.
Can I have one?
What about graffiti and cleaning?
It's the same overall issue in terms of the requirements that we will specify in living the environment we're in, okay? I mean, seriously, if you show somebody what we would subject these to, you're just giving them an invitation to beat the system, and what they're going to do. But with everything we put in a car environment, in a station environment, the whole issue of vandal resistance has to be addressed. It's been that way. Yes? For hearing impaired.
Not a hearing impaired. You mean just a regular jack?
Just a regular, iPhone, so you can speak.
We could consider it.
Well, let me, I was at, by the way, I was at 23rd Street and 7th Avenue, and I had to make the time, so she had tried some. I said, well, because last summer I tried the device, and it rang, and it was busy, and it rang. I think someone answered, but it was hard because this was the middle of the day, not rush hour. A lot of express trains. I could not hear what was happening.
One of the features with digital, we in the interest of trying to condense the presentation, we have really cut out some information that's important. With a digital device, you have the ability to be able to screen out background noise that inhibits or interferes with the conversation that's going on. So that's one feature this device would have over the existing device. It's going to have to meet the standards that we set for it. So, and it's just.
I believe so. It's about 2 to 3 times louder than the current. Yeah. You can hear it.
Oh, it is. It definitely is.
I also question whether in an emergency someone's going to pull out a pair of earphones and stick it in and.
No, but looking for information,
Yeah.
it'd be nice to be able to understand, the local noise.
Well, if this is a faithful reconstruction of the acoustics, it is worlds better than what we're currently experiencing now when you pick up when you press the button in the...
And one of the advantages of the prototype is for us to not only test it in terms of how hardened it's going to be, but test it in terms of the interaction with the customers and what their response is. The other thing that will have to happen with this is we're going to have a very comprehensive, aggressive customer information campaign to inform them of the change of the culture. I mean, this is something we've never had in the system, and this is something we're going to have to inform them of the importance of and their use of it.
Tom, any thought for the CCTV for security purposes, being able to put a camera on top of it to be able to see the environment around it?
When I saw the application of the camera they had and how wide scope it was, I was very impressed with it. It's not pan-tilt zoom, but it's pretty good. But to give you an example, if you had a camera in it, and then somebody, like in some other part of the station, said, hey, listen, there's something going on in the north end of the Northbound platform, but I'm not there, I can't see it. You had this device there, you could actually dial it up. And the idea is to put them so that nobody has to come on the platform side more than 100 feet to one of these devices.
Jim?
If someone's vandalizing one of these, is someone going to know it?
Does it send a signal, in other
Does it
words?
send a signal back to the screen?
Yes, it does. It does.
If this goes offline, somebody finds out about it.
Absolutely.
Yes, if any of the components that make up the internal electronic components that within the unit fail or are vandalized, there'll be an alarm that gets sent back to the head M. There's constant polling back and forth as well.
I'm glad you didn't ask me to attempt to vandalize that station. I had my Wheaties this morning, so I have to ask Mark to do it.
What's tempting, Mark, I know, is the blue translucent thing at the top, but it is far more resistant than it looks, put it that way.
Tom, they've had these in England for about 20 years, and they work there pretty well, don't they?
They have them in airports. They have them a lot of different places. So
come on.
We're not necessarily at the cutting edge of technological change in New York City Transit, but we're trying to change that. So,
any other questions? This is fantastic. I know a lot of us had concerns, especially with elevated stations where you're pretty far removed from a booth attendant, or other stations where you're not in a direct sight line. This is fantastic, and the fact that they'll be placed every 100 feet, I think, is an enormous assistance. So all of you, Dewey and Mark and Winton, like Wynton Marsalis. Thank you so much for all the hard work you did on this in really record time. Appreciate it. Tom, there are a few more items, and then we could close up.
They're just actually standard follow-up reports that we provide in the package every month, and if you have any questions on them, but they generally stand alone by themselves.
Could I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you, and see you in October.
Thank you.